Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peace Podcast. This is just help me recalibrate those hidden identities, whatever that looks like. And so oftentimes we walk through the world and we have these identities and expectations that we have placed on ourselves. Most of the time they're overwhelming. Most of the time we don't even identify with them, but we continue to act out the behaviors that continue those identities. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, where were these identities created? Do I even resonate with them? And if they originated somewhere other than me, what was that origination and why am I continuing them? Because there are a lot of things that we do, for instance, being the strong one or the helpful one or the one who's always present or the one who's reliable or the one who does everything anybody asks them to do. And because that thing gets us the connection that we crave, we continue inside of that role, never questioning the role, never wondering how the role is really adding to our level of burnout and fatigue, but just continuing in the role because that identity has already been shaped and created for us. If in your family you were the smart one or the pretty one or the insert adjective here, it's really hard to go through a phase in life where maybe you don't get the job that you wanted, but you were always the smart one. So then that feels like a complete rewriting of your identity, because if I didn't get the job, then I clearly wasn't the smart one. And so you start to question who you actually are because your identity is so heavily rooted in that thing. The same thing happens when somebody's childhood identity and their connection with their parents are heavily rooted in playing a sport or doing the thing that their parent once did. If that's the only connection that is created between you and your caretaker, then if you don't make the team or you stop having a love for that sport or that activity, then sometimes you start to feel out of alignment with it and with yourself because you don't know who you are without it. But what if those identities were never even created by you in the first place? Because as women specifically, we spend years of our lives trying to change our habits so that we can release the feeling of burnout and overwhelm, but we don't actually look at the real issue and understand that it isn't the behavior, it's our understanding of our own identities. So labels that we've carried for years that were never given to us, like the strong one, the responsible one, or the peacemaker, can be silently shaping your decisions because you're acting, thinking, and believing in such a way that is alignment with that. And your relationships will be shaped by that. Your self-worth will be shaped by that. And when that happens and you aren't in alignment with it, then you live an entire life that is really a ruse because that's never even who you were in the first place. So we're really going to look at how is your identity formed, why certain roles become difficult to release when we become adults and we no longer feel like they are a part of us, and how healing can create space for a more authentic version of yourself to emerge. Because a lot of what we feel as overwhelm and burnout is what's happening underneath of what's really going on in our lives. That underneath part is the part that we're carrying without ever putting it down. Nobody actually sees it, but we feel it and we know it. So I like to dig into the research because I think that the research really helps us to see that we're not alone in this, that it goes on with other people, but also like what other people are experiencing as well. Identity drives your behavior more than motivation. Research on identity-based habits by James Clear suggests that people act consistently with who they believe they are more so than what they are motivated to be. So if you're the helper, if you're the responsible one, if you're the one everybody depends on, then you act in alignment with that thing, even if you want to be the one who sets boundaries, the one who takes time for themselves, the one who experiences self-care. If someone asks you to do something and you've been the one that they can depend on, you will do what is in alignment with being the dependable one, more so than the one who has healthy boundaries and focuses on self-care, because that's the identity that you've always known. Most people don't struggle with discipline as much as they think they do. Like, if I can just be disciplined, I can make this thing happen. It's not the struggle with discipline like we think it is, but the struggle is with the identity that we're holding on to that seems to keep producing the same behaviors. So conversely, if your family system has told you that you're not going to amount to anything, a lot of times your behaviors will do things that are not in alignment with where you want to be, but are in alignment with who you've been told that you are. And we like to think that if we just discipline ourselves and set structures to lead us toward the goal that we're trying to work toward, that's going to work and shape us into the person that we want to be. But if your mindset is still stuck on that role, your identity and your connection to that identity, even if you don't resonate with it, will dictate your behaviors more than an ideal that you have for who you want to be. Secondly, self-schema shapes perception. So research on self-schema theory shows that we filter experiences through beliefs about ourselves. So when someone believes I'm not important, their brain automatically notices the areas that prove that narrative to be true. They automatically focus their attention on the pieces of the narrative in their lives that support that belief. Because even if they don't fully believe that it's true, even if they work through therapy to have self-compassion and have self-confidence, if they've been told, and it's deeply rooted in there, that there's the idea that they're not important, even if they want to believe something else, that deep-rooted understanding of that identity of not being important still creates the lens that you're looking through every single day. And that lens helps you to notice the times where you're not important more than anything else. So you don't just see the world as it is. We would love to think that we do, but your perspective is being shaped by the identity that was created for you. So you see the world through the lens of who you believe that you are. And even if you've gotten your mind to believe something different, like I am important, if that deep-rooted belief is still there and your identity is still rooted in the fact that you're not, you're going to subconsciously survey the world for instances where that's true. Also, family roles often become lifelong identities. So research from family system theory suggests that children unconsciously adopt the roles that they were given in childhood, and that helps them to maintain a stability in the family. And so when they have always been the scapegoat or the golden child or the one who messes everything up or does everything right, they are trained subconsciously, not even because they want to be, to adopt the roles and the rules of those roles simply because that is their place in the family. So it's almost like if you're in a play, right? Like, this is the person that I'm playing in the play. This is that person's quality. So I have to remain within the characteristics of that person. That happens in childhood, and then it extends beyond that into adulthood. So if you were the caretaker, you were the peacemaker, you were the achiever, you were the invisible child, then you often carry that into adulthood. So when you get into your relationships, you become the caretaker. When you go to work, you become the peacemaker. When you're out in the world, you become the achiever. You don't set boundaries with people because achieving means more to you in terms of who you are than setting boundaries and having peace in your life. And if you were the invisible child, then you just work on shrinking yourself in whatever environment that you're in, so you don't get in the way, because that's the role that you've always played. It protected you in childhood. You knew where you stood. It became predictable. So what protected you in childhood can also be perceived as something that will protect you in adulthood. But in fact, it is limiting you in your adulthood experiences because people are taking advantage of that role, especially the people who've been in your life your entire life, because they know that you'll play it just based on the fact that you always have. So you don't have the ability to step out of that role, but also once you become who you are, you're unable to align yourself with the roles that are in alignment with who you really are because you're so focused on being who other people have said that you're supposed to be. So it's no longer protecting you, but you subconsciously are still doing it because you don't know how to play any other role. Also, neuroplasticity allows identity change. So research shows that the brain can form new neural pathways throughout your life. Your identity is not fixed, but you have to do something about it. You are not who you had to become to survive. You can become something different. And when you start to actually weed through the identities that were created for you, you are able to just uproot them, much like a garden. You go in there, you see all the things that are growing weeds, and you just uproot them. You pull them out and you can plant new things. That's the same way that you can do things with your neural pathways. But you can't just plant new flowers without getting rid of the weeds, those old beliefs, those old identities that have been placed on you. You know, one time I read a book, and it was the workbook for Glennon Doyle's Untamed book. And when I went through the workbook, the beginning of that book was just, or the workbook itself was just mind-blowing because it asked questions like, what's a good mom? And then after it asks what's a good mom, then it's like asking you all of the characteristics that you believe to be true of a good mom. And then it asks you, where did those characteristics come from? Like, for instance, mine might have been, one of them was cooking a meal for your kids every night. And it asks, like, where did that characteristic come from? Well, it came from my mom always cooked for us every night. And so I thought that was something that you were just supposed to do when you're a good mom. And then it asks questions about that. Like, did that come from her mom? Did you see her mom doing it? And I know that a lot of like the experiences that she had in childhood, like even when her mom didn't, her sisters took over that. And when they did, she felt more of a child mother relationship and connection with her sisters because that's what she deemed to be true. And so when I had gotten into spaces where there were moms who were talking about, you know, ordering takeout every night, like I internally was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But also, like, their kids were still fed. They weren't neglected. So on the next page, it requires you to like question that identity, like question why you actually believe that to be true about good moms. Like, could you go to the local health food store and buy a dinner and still be feeding your children? And would you still deem that as a good mom? So you're just questioning all of those beliefs and mindsets that were established for you, either through modeling or through judgment of those same people. And once you get to the end of all of these things, it's not just about being a mom, it's about being a woman, about being a wife, once you get through all of these like titles and the good of those titles that you determine through other people's opinion, you start to realize that everything you know to be true about what you think is good has literally been planted in you and not developed by you. So if you want to fully be in alignment with yourself, you have to question those things. Now, do I still think that it makes me a good mom to feed my kids nutritious meals every day? I do. But they don't always have to come from my kitchen, even though more often than not they do. It doesn't make me a bad mom to do it another way. And so those same things can be true of the way that you view yourself. Every idea you have of what makes you good inside of your identity came from someone else, unless you have self-assessed it, addressed it, and figured out if it's growing beautiful flowers in your garden or if it's a weed and it's something that you need to remove from your belief system. Because your belief system was created before you ever understood who you actually were. Because in order to understand who you are, you have to actually become a fully functioning, thinking person, adult usually. It takes until you're in your adult years to really know that. Some people are lucky enough to have that idea when they're in their teen years and they start to weed out these things fairly early on. But a lot of us, it takes until adulthood. And because that is the case, then we have to understand that everything that we know to be true up until the point where we actually know who we are has been something that has been downloaded into us and not something that we've created for ourselves. So when you start to walk through your day and you're thinking, oh, I have to do this for this person because that makes me a good neighbor. And then I have to be this person inside of this conversation because that makes me the peacemaker that I've always been. And then when I go to work, I have to perform duties outside of my job description and I have to stay late and I have to come early because I'm the overachiever. All of those things are not true. They're just roles, characteristics inside of the roles that you have, unbeknownst to you, claimed in your childhood and continued into your adulthood. And I say this happens a lot to women because I think that women are in a lot of spaces told how to be before they've ever been taught who to be and who they are, before they've ever actually uncovered it. It's the reason why women struggle so much when they don't become moms, because when we're little, we're given babies to play with. So it's like this overwhelming feeling that your purpose resides in being a caretaker and you're being given this baby when you're a kid. So then when you become an adult and you don't want to have kids, or you don't want to be a wife, or you're not able to have kids, or you don't become a wife, then you start to think something is wrong with you. But that's only because you've been told that your role as a human, as a woman, requires those things in order for you to be of value. And much like everything else can be shed and reevaluated before you accept it, those titles can be as well, and those expectations can be as well. Because, especially for women, we don't know who we are beneath the roles that we've carried, because the roles were handed to us before we were ever allowed to be curious of who we are. We know how to care for others. We know how to perform. We know how to achieve, but we never stop long enough to ask, who am I when I'm not taking care of other people? Who am I when I'm not performing for other people to think a certain way about me? Who am I if I don't have to achieve and I can just be? And so oftentimes, when we get into a space where we start to become overwhelmed by the titles, the best thing we can do for ourselves is take those titles and put them on a shelf for a minute and reconnect, or just connect for the first time with ourselves and who we are and how we are and what really feels true to us. And the way that we do that is we make a list of all the things that we actually hate doing, but we do with a smile on our face. Like volunteering for things at the school. Maybe that's not your jam, but you keep doing it because it's what a good mom does. But perhaps you could just send in some things and you don't actually have to be present because it's not really who you are. And it is okay to not be that way. It is okay to release yourself from the judgment of other people that a good mom does those things. It is okay to say, I'm not willing to any longer subscribe to the demands that have been placed on me. And I'm going to question all of these things that piss me off. When I do them, that I'm not doing them with joy, I'm going to question why that's happening. I'm going to assess why that exists for me. Write them down, figure it out, understand what you'd rather be doing instead or who you actually are instead, and do more of that thing. And then when you start to do that, you'll start to uncover who you actually are and what roles you actually are willing to connect with instead of the ones that have been placed on you. Because the thing is, we carry these roles for years. The strong one is one that I've carried for years. And I tell myself the only reason I'm still the strong one is because I've never been quite able to take a breath and be the soft one. I've had to be the strong one. If I wasn't the strong one, then I wouldn't have ended up where I am. And I've also sat with myself long enough to say, the strong one served me for the purpose that it needed to serve me for. But I'm allowed to say, thank you for getting me to this point, but I'm no longer willing to accept that role for myself because I'm not always the strong one. I do need connection with my friends and my sister and these people that I have strong love for. I don't always want to be the one who everybody thinks is okay and doesn't ever check on. And so I've been more vocal about that, and I've shared how that's not who I resonate with anymore, even though it served me up until this purpose. When you have that conversation with yourself, when you realize what roles are no longer serving you or the people in your life because they are so overwhelming and they're taking from you instead of allowing you to serve other people, then you are able to process who you are and what you want to be in alignment with. So, practical takeaway for this one is take out your journal. I believe heavily in this, so you can refer back to it after you finish the exercise. In your journal, finish the sentence. I've always been the blank one. I feel uncomfortable when I am not blank. And then ask and answer these questions. Who taught me that was my job? What would I rather be doing instead or being instead? And how do I become more of that and less of the expectation that was placed on me? I promise you, when you write these things down, then you can start focusing on who you want to become. And it's not an easy just snap your fingers and it's done, but you can start to notice more of when you fall into the roles that have been placed on you instead of the roles that you want to be sitting in. And by doing this in your journal, you now have kind of a list of things that you want to gravitate more toward so that you can be mindful of the behaviors that you're making every single day to ensure that they're in alignment with that. But first, before anything else, you have to go pull the weeds of all of those roles that you've been placed in that were never your choices and were subconsciously things that you did because those roles were handed to you. I hope this video helps you to become exactly who you know God created you to be and to land in the roles that are really yours as opposed to the ones that were given to you. If this video resonated with you, please share it on your pages, like and subscribe to this channel, follow me on all socials, and share this video with somebody who it may help because knowledge gained and kept to yourself is selfish, but knowledge shared with the world could just be the catalyst for change that they need to break free from the bondage that they're in and surrender it over to God so that they may walk a life of freedom. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.